I read an article this morning that you wrote, and one of the things that you talked about is, especially in
My condolences. I'm sorry for that.
no, it was an amazing.
Sorry you had to make your way through that.
This is why I'm bringing it up. You were talking about, we've touched on the Gen Z demographic and a demographic that is has grown up with the idea of personalization in apps. If we take apps for example, so the apps already kind of know what they're thinking. They're able to recommend things. So that there's this idea of personalization that they've by default become used to and have come to expect. And one of the things that you mentioned in that article is you say personalization in the workplace will drive engagement and that will drive retention. So can you just touch a little bit on that? Because I know when I'm working with my clients who are creating experiences for their community, their guests, their audiences, a lot of what I'm doing, I say it so many times, but how can we personalize this experience for each individual person, which of course depends on the group size that you're talking about. But the more touch points that we can add, where you can have somebody have a reaction like, oh my gosh, like, wow, they were thinking of me, or wow, they knew that about me. Oh, I had no idea. Oh, this is amazing. So can you touch a little bit on that in the workplace and how you guys are addressing that personalization side of the strategy?
Yeah, for sure. So my background is in marketing, and I think I was working for Ogilvy in New York when it was really the era of digital CRM, and basically customer relationship management. You could do that at scale, right, with digital tools. So a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of startup owners, founders know something like MailChimp, right? Like you basically, instead of like sending one email to 100 people in BCC, like maybe how we used to do it, you now program a little email, and then you have all these variables, right? So you can put the first name of someone in there, which automatically makes you feel a little bit more, taken care of, like seems a bit more personal, right? But then there's a lot of other variables. So you could say, for example, that, like when I used to work on Huggies, the EDMs that we send out, the email newsletters that we send out would have about 267, I think, different variables in every email. So instead of sending the same promotional email to 3 million moms, you would send it based on the age of their baby, whether they're like eco-conscious or not, what price tier they buy in, even what area they live in, because you could, for example, be promoting swimming diapers in Florida where it's always warm, and then maybe in the Midwest you wouldn't do that.
Right.
And so that idea of personalizing emails was done, of course, because they could literally see that every time you add one more layer of personalization, the open rates go up, the click-through rates go up. So basically people use it more, right? Which is the engagement part. And then of course, if they use it more, they have more reason to stick around to basically open the next email and buy the next pack of diapers. So that's the retention part. And so we take that exact same principle of what the digital tools, what the web allows you to do in something like marketing, and we just bring it into the workplace. And that basically means that, again, when a company of a certain size, let's say between, the type of companies that we really focus on is maybe between 30 and 150 employees. When they think about, okay, I have some budget, so there may be an HR person sitting there and they did their job well, they got some budget for the year, and they were like, oh, okay, like how am I going to spend this money? I'm going to do a team outing. Maybe they will go to Cirque du Soleil. Okay, great. Perfect.
Great
well
outing.
done, right? everyone will love it, right? But what about maybe those 10 people out of 150 that really don't like even leaving the workplace, or who really want to go home and focus on their family? Or what about those 5 people that say, well, the whatever dollars you spend on that ticket, I wish you would have spent it on capoeira because I love that, right? And so you cannot personalize when you're just kind of like in a smaller scale, but you can personalize really well when you have a few thousand people. And basically what we're able to do is to say, we are going to do a very specific type of yoga on Thursday at 5 p.m. And yes, it's not for everyone. We really don't expect for hundreds of people in a given, Dreamplex to go and take that yoga class. But the 10 people who love it, they have it. And so it really is sort of like looking at the total amount of, or the total member base, understanding what they like, and which we can now really easily do because we have that tech layer built in. We get to know you more and more. We understand what your preferences are, what you're interested in from a creative workshop perspective or social event or learning and development or mental or physical well-being, we log what you're interested in.
Right.
So that means that we can then reach out to you and say, instead of sending you one big monthly event calendar with, we do maybe like 20, 30 events, we can say, hey, here are the 5 that we think are super relevant for you.
For you.
And
Oh,
again,
interesting.
this is totally normal when you open your Facebook or your TikTok
Mm,
feed, or when you look on Instagram. You don't see the same 5 or 10 posts that everyone sees. You would never go back to Facebook again, right? You would
right.
never open your TikTok again. The art is in sort of like making it so that you feel like, wow, they almost know me better than myself. That is the next like TikTok I want to watch, or that's the next post I want to see. And so yeah, we can do that now. We can basically serve up to people like the things that we know that they're going to be interested in, and then they know about that, that one class that they really want to go to. They go to their class, and so then you have the engagement, and the more that people engage, obviously the longer they stick around. So for a company that gives this, right, so you have to think about it like that, right? We sell to companies and they obviously use it for their employees. For a company to then say, oh, I'm going to move into my own office, right? Like I've surpassed 150 people. Why am I still paying this workplace provider like a monthly fee, kind of like a SaaS company or subscription kind of model? Why am I still paying them every month? I may as well go to, build my own office. But then you really go back to, you then have one budget, you can spend it maybe on one kind of activity, but you cannot fragment it like that. So because we have that sort of system, because we have the data and insights to tell us what people want, both in an aggregate and in smaller segments, we can then program against that. So we can say,
Mm,
yes, we are going to program something for that niche audience of 15 people who want to hear about like employee experience in Vietnam,
right.
and be able to like laser focus on those people and invite them in. And that drives that sense of personalization. And then you have a great reason to stick around, because, like, how else are you going to ever offer that to your
Mm.
employees? So yeah, that's what we
And
can
I
do.
feel like almost your employees are then going to be so excited about what's the next thing that they're going to bring. The last thing was so
Mm,
super relevant to me, and I got so much out of
right.
it. What I can't wait to hear what's going to be the next event, or the next month's event. Um,
Yeah, then it doesn't feel like a drag of like, oh, I have to go to another sort of
right.
community party. But the interesting thing is that, in co-working, right, or in sort of like flexible office, what we're doing, WeWork was one of the ones that, it wasn't really new that people shared offices, but they were the first one to really come in and make it a community
Makes
feel,
you
make it
nice.
like a brand that you wanted to be a part of. And it really went into a lot of the experience thinking of like, what's the vibe? Like when you walk in, financially, it doesn't make any sense to have a double height ceiling. But that feeling of, like, because you're trying to be efficient with your office space, because you're trying to maximize every square meter, but that feeling for the first time walking into a space where you have a double height ceiling and maybe a hugely cool artwork on the wall, you're like, whoa, this is so cool.
Mm,
So they really focus on that experiential part in the physical design, but also in all the programming that we're doing, also in how they brought people together. I know Miguel, who's one of the co-founders, he actually talked about that book, The Art of Gathering, that sense of community, that sense of like, what does it feel like to be in a workplace that's not just an office? But in a way, they really modeled themselves after Google, who with the Googleplex also created something that wasn't just an office. It was a place where you would really come and where every facet of your wants and needs were checked off, right?
right.
Because Google would invite really cool guest speakers, and they would have great internal training programs, and they would have a gym on site, and they would have napping booths, and maybe a cinema, and they would have yoga, and they would have all these things that you needed, because people are not singular, people are very multifaceted. So they offered all those things in the space. Oh, and we cannot forget free food and drinks, of
Right.
course. Right? F&B, very important. They offered all those things. But Google, in its way, was modeled after college campus, right?
Right.
The original Googleplex was modeled after a college campus, which again was that idea of like everything that you need as a person at that, specifically at that age and stage, to thrive was there, right? It was not only a place to come and study or listen to some guy lecture about something like what I'm doing right now, but it was also the place where you would, run into people, where you had that communal dining hall where you would sit down, but then you would run into someone and maybe you would flirt with someone, and maybe that would become your husband or wife later in life, right? There would be guest speakers. That would be, the gym would be on site. It would be a huge library, right? So all those elements together, that really creates a total experience. So I think it's gone in sort of like many sort of like iterations from
Right.
there. But we borrow a lot from that idea of bringing everything into one sort of like physical space, and then giving anyone sort of like everything that they could look for.